Amen. Hang a subject in air real briefly here. God's up to something. That's what we're going to be talking all relating to the text. It says that God is up to something. We as a society has been programmed to believe that the superior and mighty structures of our world will always flourish and prosper due to their dominance in numbers, power, and past success. We have been brainwashed and stripped of our confidence in God and have placed our faith and our inabilities in man's ability instead of God's stability. When we look within the church community, it seems as though God is only using the mega churches and has forgotten about the smaller churches that gets no recognition, they get no publicity, they get no airtime or media coverage for the things and people they have aided and assisted. But I want to encourage the smaller churches just for a moment and let you know God does not count numbers, but God makes numbers count. And when it comes towards God's business, God is always up to something. This concept of only the strong survive and the bigger and better metaphors and the more the merrier ideologies have not always stood the test of time. It has not always proven to be true, and it's definitely not how God conducts his business. This concept actually does not need to be spiritualized at all. We can look down through a history and a few earthly examples and see how small quantities of people have overcome obstacles and challenges. We can look down through the history and see that God was up to something when it looked as though God wanted nothing to do with it. In 1960s, during the Civil Rights Movement, God was up to something. The black community was surely outnumbered by their oppressors, but it was just a few black young men and women who decided to mimic a nonviolent approach that was going on in Greensboro, North Carolina, sparking a righteous flame in the Civil Rights Movement, and they started to do sit-ins in the segregated business areas of our downtown Nashville, and God made a few numbers have a large impact. In 2008, God was up to something. A young Democratic Illinois governor had the odds against him as he was attempting to become the first African-American president of these so-called United States. He had a strong support system, and through much test and travail, President Obama surpassed the dictators and spectators because God was up to something. In times of antiquity, God was up to something. Abraham, not knowing much about God, when God called him, trusted him enough to follow him. And even though Abraham could not see God, he knew God was up to something. And in our text, God is still up to his old tricks. God is up to something when the people of God were about to go into battle. So God calls Gideon. And there's nothing actually profound and astonishing about Gideon's character as far as the text allows us to know. But what the text does allow us to know in chapter 6, that Gideon is beating or threshing out wheat inside of an area that's made strictly for wine pressing. The reason why he's threshing out wheat where grapes are meant to be pressed is because the enemies, the Midianites, have been coming into their town, stealing and destroying the wheat that they produced and provided for themselves, leaving the Israelites dismantled economically and dismayed spiritually. So to confuse the enemy, Gideon said, Gideon, let's take the wheat that I have. And he says, I know when the Midianites come the next time, they will expect me on the threshing floor, but I will be in the wine presser, doing the same thing, just at a different place. Look at what you're saying, Osborne. Faith does not mean accept your situation, but faith says adjust to your situation. Faith does not mean give in, but faith means you're supposed to stand out. Faith does not mean accept God's will, but faith means I know God is still up to something inside of his will. Faith without works is dead. Accepting your situation is not working in your situation, but adjusting to your situation is working in your situation, and shows that you believe that God is still up to something. All right. Earlier I said that there was nothing too astonishing about Gideon's character until God calls him and said he was a mighty man of valor. Interesting phrase and choice of words God uses here, because Gideon's background meets nothing equivalent to what God has called him. He's actually from the tribe of Manasseh, and the least of the 12 tribes of Israel. He's the least of his brethren and his father's house, but yet God calls him a mighty man of valor, which means he has strength, courage, and bravery. And with that calling, Gideon finally accepts his new role, and he begins to attack on his enemies, the Midianites. He had an army of 32,000 men, which was still rather small in those days compared to the other armies of the day. Mind us on today, the only thing, watch this now, that separates the Midianites from the Israelites is a spring of water. And once you cross that spring of water, you are now considered in the enemy's territory. In other words, they were in sight of view of what another person could see. The scripture says, watch this, that we walk by faith and not by sight. But how many of you know today that faith is not only based upon what you don't see, but faith is also based upon what you do feel? Okay, I'm in the text because God tells Gideon that the army is too big. When y'all win, y'all gonna say we done it instead of giving God the glory. The army of Gideon was on the hill, and the spring of water was in the middle, and the Midianites were in the valley. So God tells Gideon, tell the 32,000 that if any of y'all are afraid and trembling, you can turn around and go home right now. The text says 22,000 returned home. Yeah. One might wonder what made 22,000 men turn around and go home. I would suggest that faith brought them there. But when they looked across that spring of water and saw their oppressors and saw their persecutors, they saw the people who have been demanding their economic situation, that they rather remain safe than exercise in their faith. So the text says that 22,000 went home. What I'm saying is real faith is validated not by what you say, but it's validated by what you do, by what you see. Say that one more time. Real faith is not validated by what you say, but it's validated by what you do, by what you see. The mouth said one thing, but their faith said another thing. I'm pretty sure, I wasn't back then, but I'm pretty sure when Dr. King was planning a protest in the march, there were some people that said, yeah, Dr. King, we are with you. But when they seen the dogs coming towards their way, but when they seen the police officers pulling up to their side, when they seen the water hose start to get turning up, I'm pretty sure a couple of the men and women went back to their homes. Listen to everything God has planned to win through you. Some people may be excited for you, but as soon as you need some help and assistance, some people will certainly flee and hide, and that's when you have to still believe and have faith that God is still up to something. I'm about to get ready to close here. So now the army is down to 10,000. God has separated the men from the boys. Those who didn't have faith and courage are back at home, and now you have 10,000 men who have bravery and courage to fight in spite of what they see. These are the type of faithful that profess they walk by faith and not by sight individuals. But God said something to Gideon as well. He says 10,000, that's still too many. When y'all win, y'all still gonna be boasting in your own victory. You're still gonna be saying, we done it, instead of God done it. So he says, Gideon, I'm going to show you who's going to go into the battle with you. He says, take them down to the water. Remember, they're up on the hill now. He says, take them down to the spring. And there I will give you a test to show you who will go with you. He says, those who kneel down to drink, and those who drink the water like a dog. This is a story about faith, and the posture of how the 10,000 men drank the water was so important because, watch this, because the posture symbolized how prepared and vigilant the men actually were. It also showed Gideon who were more alert and attentive in times of affliction. 300 men drank the water like dogs, which means they bent down, cupped some water in their hands, and put water up to their mouth. drinking it like a dog. 9,700 bit down, putting their face into the water, drinking it like desperate men who are about to die, and that there's their last drink they're ever going to have. There was nothing wrong with how the 9,700 men drank the water, but God was showing Gideon who was going to have their head in the game when it was time to go into battle. Drinking the water like a dog was good because as you're drinking, your eyes are still focused on your enemy who stands across from you. Y'all missed that. While you're drinking the water like a dog, you can still see what's in front of you. God was trying to show Gideon those who had their head on into the river was not prepared. They were not diligent enough to go into battle with you. In other words, they didn't have enough faith to believe that God could still have given them the victory.
All right, yeah, come on.
So Gideon says, God says, Gideon, I'm going to use the 300 who took what I gave them and still kept their eyes on the prize. I'm going to take the 300 of those who actually still didn't depend that the water was their source, but God was their ultimate source. I believe Peter said it like this: be sober and be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. They had to continue to have their eyes on the enemy because they might have got surprised by an attack. Good faith, I'm going to take my seat. Good faith will always have you being watchful. But no faith will make you put your head in the water out of desperation. Because you don't see yourself coming out of it, but God is up to something. Fear will make you put your head in the water. Finances will make you put your head in the water. No food on your table will make you put your head in the water. Oppression will make you put your head in the water. But God is looking for some vigilant folk. They know in spite of what it looks like, God is still up to something. He's looking for some folk in spite of what it sounds like. God is still up to something. God bless you.